All right, vulnerability disclosure policy, U.S. Department of Transportation. Introduction, U.S. Department of Transportation mission for the United States to ensure the fast, safe, and efficient, and accessible, convenient transportation system that meets with the vital national interest to enhance the quality of the life of the American people today and in the future. In support of the mission, DOT works to ensure security, the conspicuous posture of the DOT operated information system, maintain confidence with the DOT with the American public, the policy with an intent with the given security research, clear guidelines for conducting vulnerability discovery activities to convey with the preference for how they submit the discovered vulnerability to us. Policy describe the what system type of the research that are covered under this policy, how to send the volunteer vulnerability reports, how long we are security research with the wait and with the public disclosure of vulnerabilities. We encourage you to contact with the report potential vulnerabilities in our system. Appreciate your support in correcting vulnerabilities in DOT system. Authorization. If you make a good faith effort to comply with the policy during security research, we will consider your research to be authorized and we will work to understand and resolve the issue quickly. DOT will not recommend and pursue legal action related to your research. Should legal action be initiated by a third party against your for your activities that were conducted in accordance with the policy, we will make the authorization known. Guidelines. Use the policy research means activities in which notifies us as soon as possible after the discovery of the real potential security issue. Makes sure every effort to avoid privacy violation, degradation of the user experience, disruption, production system, destruction, manipulation of the data. Only use of the exploit with the extent with the necessary with the firm vulnerability presence. Do not use exploit with the compromised affiliated data with the established percent with the command line access or exploit with the pivot to the other system. Provide users reasonable amount of time to resolve the issue before you disclose its publicity. Do not submit a high volume of low quality reports. When you have the types of vulnerable exists that encounter any sensitive data, including personally identified information, financial information, priority information, trade secrets of any party, you must stop your test, notify us immediately, and not disclose the data to anyone else. Research and test methods. Testing method authorized initial include examination, unique technology deployments, including custom code, testing procedural action for the custom code function area. The following test methods are testing any system other than the system set forth in the scope section below, disclosing vulnerability information set forth in the reporting vulnerability and disclosure sections below. Conduct network denial of service or test for the impair access, degrade operational capability of the damaged system or data. Executing physical testing, office access, open doors, tailgating, social engineering, fizzing, with phishing, or any other non-technical vulnerability testing. Deploying attacks against underlying technology that are published and are known in the industry area. Using general scan capabilities that scan common vulnerabilities to exploit or exploits. Testing third-party application website services to integrate with or connect or link to the form of DOT system. Deleting, altering, sharing, retaining, destroying DOT data, information rendering DOT data or information accessible, or using exploit accelerated data information establishing command line access, establishing persistent presence of the DOT system, pivot to the other DOT systems. The scope of the vulnerability disclosure policy. Vulnerability disclosure policy apply with the following system. Server that does not exploit with identified with the server out scope of the not authorized testing scope of the dot asset. Subject to this policy will update regularly all U.S. Department of Transportation operated website and scope of the vulnerability disclosure policy, indicating a list of fully qualified domain names: 911, BTS, CMTS, Gov, Distracted Driving, Gov, Distraction, Gov, DOT, EMS, Grant Solution, Fly Healthy, NHTSA, NHTSA Gov, Protect Your Move, Gov, Safecar Gov, Safe OCS Gov, Safer Car Gov, Safer Truck Gov, Track Safety Marketing Gov, Transportation Gov, and USMMA EDU. The Federal Aviation Administration operation sites will contain Federal Aviation Administration, specifically Vulnerability Disclosure Program, linking with the may verify with the general dot vulnerability disclosure policy scope. Site and services acts for the DOT does not directly manage the affiliate with the DOT mission and operated with these agreements needs external with the DOT outside of the DOT vulnerability disclosure policy scope. Alright, reporting vulnerability. Information submitted under this policy with the defense of the purposes only and to mitigate the remedy vulnerability. The findings include with the new discovered the vulnerabilities of the effect with all users or product If it's not solely with the dot, we'll make sure with a report with the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency where it will be handled under the coordinated vulnerability disclosure process. Will not share your name, contact information without express permission. Dot does not provide payment for vulnerability submissions. By submitting a vulnerability report, you can acknowledge that it has no exemption for the payment that expressly waive the future payment claims against U.S. government related to your submission. Additional to that, will not provide any type of recognition for the disclosure of vulnerability. We accept vulnerabilities at .-vdp@.gov. The reports may be submitted anonymously. If you share the contact information, you can acknowledge the receipt of your report within 14 business days. We do not support PGP encrypted emails, particular sensitive information. Please use the legitimate email address considered the email.vulnerabilitydisclosurepolicy.gov. By submitting vulnerability report with the dot, researchers warrant that the report and any attachments do not violate the intellectual property rights of the third party submitted grant with the dot, not exclusive of the royalty-free and worldwide perpetual license. Use, reproduce, create derivative works, and publish report any attachments. What we'd like to see from you in the future in order to use the triad prior submission recommendation for the report, describe the location, vulnerability, disclosure, or potential impact exploitation, include the date with the discovered vulnerability, detailed description, step of tools needed to reproduce vulnerability, proof of concept, script screenshots are helpful and be submitted in English. What you can expect from us, we continue with you share with the contact information we commit with the coordinated as you as openly as quickly as possible. Within 3 business days, we acknowledge that the report has been received. When the legitimate email address is used in submission to best use our ability to conform with existing vulnerability to you. Be as transparent as possible when the steps taken during the remediation process, including issue challenges that may delay the resolution. We will maintain an open dialogue discussion to discuss issues. Our disclosure. DOT is committed with the timely correction vulnerabilities we choose. We recognize that the public disclosure vulnerability in the absence of the readily available corrective action likely to increase the versus decrease in risk. Accordingly, we require that reported vulnerability refrain public disclosure for the minimum of 90 calendar days for the day with the dot acknowledge of the receipt of the report. In some cases, that may ask for additional delay public disclosures to the extent with a consistently applicable law. That generally will not publicly disclose vulnerability identified in the system once remediated. Privacy. The statement is provided pursuant to the Privacy Act 1974, Title 5 U.S. Standard Code 552A, with the vulnerability reports listed under the authority of Binding Operational Directive 2001. Principal intent with the collection of information submitted with identified evaluated potential vulnerabilities to internet connected services and systems. Contact information collected with the submission vulnerability reports will be included in the Privacy Act system records known as the .ALL16 titled Mailing Management System, and will be subject to the routine use publish provision. Requested information voluntary have with the final failure to furnish requested information may result in the inability to evaluate the submitted vulnerable report. May use the contact information provided vulnerable reports to file with the submitted contact information may be shared, but contractor federal agencies assist with the remediation vulnerability. Respect the right to privacy. Protect you with a visit with a website in conform with the privacy website policy. Question regarding policy may be sent with the vulnerability .-vdp@.gov. And we also invite you to contact us to suggest improving this policy. Last updated Friday, the February 17th, 2023. And that's an overall introduction to the vulnerability disclosure policy of the U.S. Department of Transportation.